This episode is in partnership with Authority Magazine. Authority Magazine, a Medium publication, is devoted to sharing in-depth and interesting interviews featuring people who are authorities in business, pop culture, wellness, social impact, and tech.
Joining me once again as guest co-host is the wonderful Jane Sibbett. Jane is a talented actress and storyteller, best known for her role in Friends. Jane is also a writer, producer, director, photographer, advocate, and source conduit, and I am so grateful to call her my friend. We're joined by Judy French, who leads outreach for the National Bullying Prevention Center in Los Angeles. She's reached over 30,000 students, parents, and educators through workshops on everything from conflict resolutions to self-advocacy. Judy's passion for creating kinder, more connected communities really shines through her work, and we're really excited to have her on today. Judy, welcome to Believe in People.
Yay! Hello.
Okay, I want to first start about the connection between you and Jane. Jane was saying that you two have known each other since you were 5 years old. Is that?
I was 6, she was 5, and my sister was 4. And I sort of remember we were greeting, it was one of those parental greetings, where they line up the kids and face each other. And this is our daughter, Janie. And of course, she's cute as a button even then, and then here's Margaret and Judy. And probably Margaret didn't say anything. And then I was probably like, hi, Judy. But yeah, I remember right on the front steps of our house there. I think it was on our side of the street, Janie, if I'm remembering.
Yeah, somewhere I remember meeting in the middle of the street, and then we probably got out of the street at some point.
Okay. Well, it was a dead end street.
It was a dead end, so it was safe,
So we spent a lot
street.
of time in the street, unlike other children.
And the French sisters have been my best friends ever since. Really, it was, how great to be, because, we're only 30 years old now. So, it's okay.
I'm only 12. I'm only 12. So I don't know how all of this works. I don't know.
Oh, it's so great.
Yeah.
And Judy's always been magnificent. So I know that you wanted to say more about all the great things about Judy, but can I just say, for all of my life, I've always looked up to Judy, not only because she was so much taller than I was, but because she was just, she danced with the San Francisco Ballet when she was little, and she's a phenomenal writer as well. And now she's doing this work. And I know, Amy, that you wanted to share a little bit about this work too. I couldn't be more proud to have her as my friend. So thank you, Amy, for inviting me here to bring someone I love and adore and so appreciate, and see the value of her work in this world right now.
Jane's family was very much like our second family, and maybe just for the sheer fact that we squatted, my sister and I just absolutely squatted at her house as often as we could and ate as much food out of their pantry. So much so that, it was a little embarrassing for my parents. It was like we had like hollow leg or something, like we never stopped eating. We grew a lot more than you, though. So
yeah, you're much taller than I am.
Wow. Well, it's amazing that you have such a long time friendship, and that's beautiful.
Lucky.
And I wish in this world there were more of that. Judy, we were talking about, you lead the outreach for the National Bullying Prevention Center in Los Angeles, and wow, although you've reached out to over 30,000, I was mentioning in the intro, students and parents and educators, and now, more than ever, we're talking about bullying and maybe even redefining what bullying is. And so I want to ask you, has the definition of bullying over the years changed, especially with social media?
Hugely, and not even social media, because the reason that the definition has changed is because we got smart and actually looked at it. A lot of the mythology around bullying was that, somehow some people were born bullying, and they're not. It's a learned behavior. And so the research is only about 2 generations old. It's not very, we don't have very much, but we have enough now to know what some of the causative factors are, or risk factors of being someone who bullies, or someone who is bullied. We know some of those risk factors. But yes, the definition has changed. So now the the agreed upon characteristics, there is no single definition of bullying or cyberbullying, which is fascinating to me. There is not one that governs all of this sphere, not at all. And that's because, there's a lot of different feelings about bullying still. But the most common characteristics, which is what we work off of, are hurt or harm. The target cannot get it to stop because they don't have the same amount of power as the person or group doing the bullying. And that power piece is super important. And that's one of the reasons why we want to get at it in childhood. And that's the mission at Pacer's National Bullying Prevention Center, is to really have childhoods that are free from this. And that puts us in this really interesting territory because we believe it can be done. We believe that since no one is born knowing this behavior, that we can influence the learning of other social skills, positive social behaviors. So yeah, lots has changed. Tons has changed. But mostly from us looking at it and realizing, how kids learn, how they acquire social skills. And that's not by us talking about them, but us modeling them. So you are right. If your antenna go up there for society and social issues, because yes, kids are watching everything.
Everything. I think of I saw some kids out in the street living on a dead end. Also,
Yeah.
I saw this one kid absolutely bullying another kid, and it's a neighborhood kid that I love so much. Excuse me. And I went out there and I felt like I responded inappropriately. I felt very strong, and I said, "Are you gonna let him get away with that?" As if it was his problem.
Oh, the target to the
Yeah. I felt horrible. And when I was thinking about it, I'm like, no. And then I went over to the other one and I said, you can't do that. Again, what is a person to do? What does a parent do in these situations when you come upon that? Because I have seen bullying. I have been bullied. And I think I did it inappropriately. So do you have any tips?
Well, first of all, give yourself some grace because, in the moment you intervened, and most bullying situations will not resolve well until a caring adult is involved. So that's a whole big rabbit hole we could go down to, but that really it has a lot to do with the relationships you have with children. But I should have a big sign over my head that says the best bullying advice is situation specific. So it may very well be in the situation that you were in that was a good thing to do. And you don't know, what exactly, was happening there. And you don't know that in the next hour or two, the other kid, the target, might have been flinging it back at, it's just very difficult to tell. If you know those boys, that's fine. But yeah, that old advice about, you do something and the bullying will go away. It doesn't work.
Yeah. No, just having the basketball hitting his face was just like,
oh, okay. That's not good. That's, here's the thing too, which is always surprising to me, is that you get to adulthood at age 18 and that becomes assault.
right.
So yeah, but there isn't a whole lot of for some kids, their social skills acquisition between, I know it's wrong to throw the ball and throwing the ball, like that impulse control thing, there's not much in between that and doing it, right? So
Right.
if we don't give kids a way to sort of simmer that down, and some kids acquire those things super slowly, and some kids maybe never, but that's the work that I see in schools all the time. People are trying really, really hard to show kids there are other ways to settle conflict. And
Right.
if you are mistreating someone, here's what you need to do to repair that. Like, I see that happening in schools, but there are other folks in the world that need to be doing that work too with kids.
Definitely. And Judy, so what's the biggest misconception people have about bullying that you wish you could correct immediately?
That it's just a part of childhood, that it's just a part of growing up, that it's a childhood rite of passage,
Wow.
and that there's nothing you can do about it because it's just going to happen. I find that these intractable social problems always come with that, that little
Yeah.
extra bit. What can we do? The poor are always with us. It's that
Wow,
kind of thing.
and you
Yeah.
know what, Judy? So all right, so now we're being you're talking about modeling. Look what we're facing now. I mean, I'm from Canada, and I see it from a distance, but you're living, breathing with this with a new
Fully.
person, a bully. So
Mhm.
what do you do? I mean, doesn't this exasperate
So
things?
yeah, it's hard because kids are, face pretty harsh discipline for using certain language and using, harassing other kids and all these behaviors that we're seeing out in the world. We do have a point of view about certain language, though, I will say, and about what we should focus on. So with children per se, we are very, very careful not to use the word bully. We don't. We use it as a verb, but not as a noun, because
Ah,
children are in development. And I realized we were talking
Mm.
about adult modeling. So at that point, we can agree that sometimes it's quite apt. But
Yeah.
we want adults to focus on behavior because you know, tagging character or giving a character assessment is less useful when you're trying to modify bullying behavior. So,
As I just did. I just called somebody a bully, didn't I?
well, and we're in adult world, but
Okay. All
I figured
right. But for
I really
kids.
work on my language all the time. So, because it's hard to remember. It's very convenient. It's a convenient handle, but
Mm.
I was thinking of like some of the kids we knew growing up. And there's one that I can think of that if you saw him at like 38 years old, you would have been like, oh my God, that's so and so. He was a bully.
I know him. He's been reaching out to me on Facebook. I had
There
to
you go.
block him.
You never, and
I know who you're talking about.
that tag never comes off. And so with
It's
kids
so
anyway,
true.
we're careful. Sorry, I did a digression.
Yeah, no, it's okay, but we had a bully.
Yeah, and I
He
think they're
lives.
just sometimes, when we were growing up, there was, it was the people that were rough and tough and beat you
Mhm.
up. But recent research is fascinating because here, I'll ask you guys, what do you think the most prevalent form of bullying is? And think about all the stuff you know out in the world. What do you think among growing folks, children and youths?
I would say teasing
Okay, so
is
so
that
verbal
teasing or
I would say
harassment.
shame.
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 Shame is a big one too.
Along those lines. So a lot when I go to present, the monster in every room is cyberbullying,
Yeah.
understandably so, because it seems like there's so much we can't control.
Right.
And we still have categorized everything, physical, verbal, etc. But there's a study done, a meta-analysis of over 14,000 middle and high school students, southeastern United States. And so I think it's statistically relevant. What they found was the most prevalent form among those two age groups is social exclusion. So a
Mm.
kind of forced breaking of the connections between people in a community. And so it kind of goes with shame, like that kind of shunning that happens if you are someone who, people feel don't can't belong in the group or don't belong in the group. So that social exclusion piece, and we know that the risk factor of being someone who's bullied is social isolation. So you
I
think
had that
of
as a senior in high school where I walked up and
yeah,
my whole group just walked away and I had no idea what was going on. And it destroyed me my senior year.
it's so powerful. And you think about now you go to a party or you go to something where you don't know everybody, and the first thing you do is to look for somebody that you know. Second thing is, am I dressed appropriately? Do I belong to this group with my costume and my affect? And we like look at all of these things. It never goes away.
Right.
But somehow we think it's children, so it's little, right? But
Right.
it's so powerful, that need to belong and be connected to other humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And Judy, so what are the signs, if I may, so that you could have the conversation?
So, again, you knowing the child that you're dealing with, you probably would get some clues. So some of the signs that a child's being bullied, they may withdraw from things that they formerly enjoyed. They might not want to ride the bus if that's where it's happening, or go to school if that's where it's happening, which is something that makes perfect sense to me. They don't want to be in places where that pain from the bullying occurs. And it is pain. That social exclusion piece is so large, a thing in a kid's life that kids would rather have a physical fight. They'd rather be hit and be bullied physically than undergo that disconnection from other humans. That is horrible. That's the worst. And the effects are longer lasting with that kind of social emotional bullying or relational aggression. So, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I think back to middle school, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but,
But
I believe, because this is believe in people, I believe that there are things that we can do about it. So
Good.
that's the bad,
What
that's
can
the
we
bad
do?
news. But the
let's
good
talk
news
about
is we can do something.
it.
Yeah. I don't sit well with there's no hope and there's no way of moving forward. Of course, there's a way of moving forward, and there's already things that have been put in place. We know that the education that's been done over the last generation and a half or so, bullying prevention programs, social emotional learning, working on kids gaining positive conflict resolution skills, it's working. It came, I think, when the CDC started gathering data, or the government started gathering data about the incidences of bullying in like 2015. That was at about 28%. And the most recent statistic is 19.2%. So we've made a huge dent in children's perception of them being bullied every year. That said, we have to continue to educate about it. So education piece is key. Awareness is always key, and we have to keep refreshing our knowledge. The biggest deficit for me when I go out and about is in adult world. So kids are getting a lot of good stuff. They really are. If they're in school and in community, there's a lot being pushed out for them. They know bullying is bad. But it's the biggest gap in education and awareness is among adults. That's what I see. And that's just my personal perception, because I speak to a lot of parents and a lot of, educators and a lot of folks. So that's that. The other interesting thing too, and the reason why we have to keep it up, it can't be a campaign for a year or 5 years, strategic plan, we're going to work on bullying. No, it has to be the commitment every day, to model kindness, acceptance of inclusion, and acceptance of difference, and inclusion every day. And that's a long-term thing. And people get really bored with long-term things. They don't like that. They want, cut to the chase.
Trauma.
Give me the one thing I can do. But that modeling piece is huge. And making sure that kids have an adult they trust, that they're connected throughout their community, peer to peer, but they're connected to adults, because bullying is an adult problem. Adults need to come in and help it. Not the same with conflict, not at all. Conflict, we want kids to learn those skills and solve those things themselves. Bullying cannot be solved that way. So knowing the difference for a child, or knowing when they need to raise their hand and ask for help, and that it's not snitching, that piece of education is very important. But it's really adults that kind of need to get it together, and you can educate yourself. Got a lot of great stuff up on our sites, but there's a lot of good stuff out there. Just make sure that it's based in research, that's evidence-based. And it's challenging times to get certain research right now. It's been a really difficult few days, but that research is there and it will come back more prominently. You can find it if you need it. I can find it for you if you need it. But to continually educate ourselves. And to understand too that most kids who don't like bullying, they still may be quite capable of bullying behavior and not realize that that's what they're doing. So that was another feature of that 2022 study, about, relational aggression and social exclusion, is that a lot of kids thought certain behaviors were okay not realizing that those things were actually bullying. Because
Well,
nobody
Because it
wants
might be modeled in their home that way, or
well,
on
or
television.
they thought it was funny, or they were
Right,
just with the group, just doing, this is just what we do on the team,
right. Judy, what do you do? So I had the joy of seeing you do your presentation in Los Angeles, and it was just so blown away by it. And I know that you go and speak at schools, and you speak to parents also,
All the time, yeah, because that's what schools want. They
right?
want
Which
you
is
to come
great.
talk to the parents, but parents
So
don't
they don't have to.
come.
Yeah, I
Parents
was
don't
going to
come.
say if there's it's a parent that's a parent of a bully or a parent that is a bully, and the parents like, please, maybe this will help them. They may not show up. So, how do the other parents? I mean, how what do you suggest for other parents that are seeing it in their children or even seeing it in a neighbor? I mean, what?
Well, I mean, bullying is a community problem. So the more connected
Mm,
we are in our communities, the more that we know one another. I mean, literally know your neighbors, even if you don't like love them. I
yeah.
mean, I'm okay if you don't love your neighbor, but do know them and also know that, if the fire comes down your hill, you'll be helping them too. I mean, that was bred in us, right, Janie?
Right.
You don't just
Right.
walk away if someone's in need, right? So this seems to
Absolutely.
be lessons that have kind of gone away, but connecting up the community, we know has lasting positive effects because it's really much harder to bully someone that you know and have been treating with respect. That's not so easy to do. So that is a safeguard and is a bit of bullying prevention. But again, it's long term.
yeah. And
Like,
Judy,
oh,
what happens? What's your approach if communities where bullying is brushed off? They're saying, let's say, kids will be kids. What do you do in that case?
happens a lot. I try to turn them towards data that I think will move the needle, which is around academic achievement. Oh, I know you want a lot for your kid. You're sending him to the math tutoring and, he plays this traveling league hockey and like there's all this achievement in there. Um, when a child is being bullied or part of a bullying dynamic, because kids who are bullying are not happy either, and those dynamics, those roles change all the time. So who knows, they're being bullied, they could be bullying others. All of that prevents kids from acquiring the education and skills that they need. There's plenty of research on it. And that's where I go. I always go over to the things you want for your child. How do you suppose they're going to get them if they're embroiled in something that is upsetting and changing them? Like that doesn't work. So I spend a lot of time proving things to people
Mm,
because it is not always a simple task to talk about prevention. It just isn't.
yeah.
I used to say, like,
Exactly.
do you brush your teeth? Do you try to eat healthy? Those are things about prevention. Okay. Do you store cans of gasoline right next to the matches in your living room? No, of course not. But when it comes to social problems, people just can't wrap their heads around, is there something I could be doing to help? Oh, I'm supposed to like do the thing?
Yeah.
No.
I spoke with Violet, my youngest, Amy, and Judy had her on her teen advocacy team. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Was it the
It was
teen?
my it was the local youth advisory board here in Los Angeles. We now have a national one instead of local ones. We just
Right.
have it.
So great. And she said the thing that she remembered most of the one just beautiful point that it wasn't anti-bullying so much as prevention, and she said, and that gave us compassion also for the bully because, as Judy was saying, they don't necessarily want to be a bully. They don't want to be disliked. They don't want to be cruel, but that's like compelling. And so if you're going to that place of compassion, there's an inroad there, right? Like you were saying, you just say, oh, you're doing this and this, and you want to go to college and, whatever that might be. Um,
Right. It can really, yeah. Well, I
lean
heard
into it.
at this meeting that I was at the other day where it was all the parents of children with disabilities.
Mm,
One of the teachers got up and said, bullying prevention begins with empathy instruction. And I thought that was very interesting because I think when we were
mm,
growing up, nobody thought you could learn things like that. You either had them or you didn't. You're either popular or you weren't. You either had a lot of
Yeah.
friends or you didn't.
Good point.
Nobody told me that you could acquire these wonderful social skills that make your life better, that actually can help you be successful. They're not, and I always have this thing with soft skills as though they're lesser. Those are everything. You want to hold a job, you want to have a good, healthy relationship with someone. The soft skills are that's kind of it. So I'm always feeling a little bad for the word soft and soft
I
skills.
know. It's so true.
Just a texture. That's all.
I know. That's so true.
Texture.
Judy, you've worked with thousands of people. What's the most unexpected lesson you learned from a student or a young person?
Oh gosh. I feel like I learn something every time I'm there.
It's great.
I think about, well, I was just looking at some old videos we had about a peer advocacy program where children, 4 or 5 kids were trained to be champions for a kid with disabilities this was a group of kids with disabilities who were, most of them were non-speaking. It's not to say they weren't communicating, but they were non-speaking. And in part of this video, this girl named Hope was signing, but she was speaking at the same time. But in order for us to understand her better, she was trying to help me. And she said, "There's always hope." And it was her name too. So I thought that was really
That's
cool. I don't
great.
know if I'm not doing the sign right, but it was just that here's a child who's incredibly vulnerable. Um, uh, and having her peers around her, she was just buoyant with the joy of being connected to other humans. It's always out there. It's always there. It's always possible to connect to that. And I believe that were we to pay attention, if we were to get critical mass around this idea that we can prevent a social ill like bullying, we could. I love to take on that conversation, by the way. I love the power of low expectations. I love it when people challenge me. I love the guy who came up to me and said, "Bullying made me the man I am today." And I said, "Sir, I don't have time to unpack all that, but it seems to me like the situation is still very alive for you," which exactly proved my point.
Yeah, right.
50 years old, and it didn't go away.
No.
Or what's the other? Oh, I know the other one I really loved. My girls are learning martial arts so that they can kick the butts of anybody else who tries to bully them. And I was like,
wow. And that's prevalent.
Yeah, it is.
because to them, it's if someone meets you with power, you meet them with more power. The problem is when it's this thing, right? Or they bring their 7 brothers and so we know the things that escalate now. It's very difficult to tell parents, don't show up at the family's house of the kid who's bullying your kid. Don't show up at their house. Don't do that. And by the way, you're never going to know the discipline that, like, for instance, the school has to enact, on that other child who's doing the bullying. You're not going to know. So you can be very unhappy, but, please back down. So we try to provide like some scaffolding for feeling your way through that as a parent and stuff. And for the kids too, our big deal is, we adults want to be advocates. We're the 3 of us, the kind of people that want to advocate and be out there and doing good things. But one of the most important things we can do for kids who are in a situation like bullying is to promote their self-advocacy so that they're learning to say, "Hey, this is what I need, or this is what I don't need, or here's my strengths." And we do that work even with kids who are largely non-speaking, because we can tune in to their behavior. No, he doesn't like that, put the child at the center of the solution creation. That gives the power back that bullying takes away.
Wow.
So that's another thing that adults can do.
So how would that work, Judy? Tell me. So say you're coaching somebody through a situation where they're getting bullied. You would actually advocate for them to say, establish their boundaries. No, that doesn't work for me. Or how does that work?
No, what I'm envisioning is something we do, which is having let's say it's a target. And she comes to one of you and asks for your help to make a plan to stop the bullying. And you can see, this is serious. There might be something here, and I really need to listen. And so you listen. This is not a conversation between peers. That works for conflict. Stop. I don't like it. those things should be said in conflict. And if the conflict continues, then it starts to cross the line into bullying. At that point, you need an adult involved. So what we envision is adults helping kids unlock the thing that's got them stuck and figure out what they want to have happen. So I would ask a target, after I got some basic details, and you never get them in a linear way ever, it always comes like this. But when you have enough, so, well, if this situation were better or different, tell me what it looks like to you. Like, how are you in this situation? What are the other kids doing? That is the magical tool right there. That's the self-advocacy tool, because expressing, even if it's just an imagination exercise, what does it look like? Where do you sit? Do you get to sit wherever you want in the cafeteria? Who's laughing along with you? Not at you, laughing with you. What are you doing? Those pieces are the things that kids don't understand. Those create change. And when a kid knows that they can create positive change in their world, the world's their oyster. Things can happen then. And so that's the piece of self-advocacy that we're talking about. Yes, they can see peers doing that, but it's most likely that they're going to receive, that mentorship from an adult, talking them through it. And then, of course, the other step that has to happen after that, which no kid really loves, is now we're going to have to probably get some other people involved.
Yeah.
But if you've been there and listened to the kid and put them at the center, this solution doesn't happen without your input. Wow, that's a completely different process of getting at the problem. So we have a resource called the Student Action Plan, and so that's what that plan is. But the reason why I'm so sort of obsessed with it right now is because I'm writing content about speaking up. We're having a contest right now called Speaking Up About Speaking Up, because we know that kids really, it's not easy.
Yeah, no,
it's just not easy. So
I still have a hard time at this age speaking up.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And Judy, oh my gosh, this is a part 2, 3, 4, and 5.
That's why I'm always like, you have to give me like parameters.
You're right. You're so right. You're so right. So
important.
from a point of view of we asked this question at the end of our podcast or our episode, and I'd like to ask you, from the perspective of the person that's being bullied, why should they continue to believe in people?
Oh, such a good question. Why should they continue to believe in people? Because bullying is a behavior, and behavior can change. And that's the one thing that adults have not been very good about communicating to kids. This is a behavior. Behavior can change. You're not stuck being someone who bullies. No. And that I would want every child to know, whatever situation they're stuck in. Yeah, I know this seems awful. You feel like you're all alone and nobody gets this situation, but this can change. I want everybody to know that, especially right now when we're feeling a bit forlorn and a bit like, what do we do? No, behavior can change. And I know that I'll try to be true to my compass, and keep going.
Exactly. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Yeah, so important, Judy. It's so important. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
It was so exciting to see my friend who had some bullying of her own when she was a child, to see her rise and thrive and help so many kids and families move through this. So it was absolutely inspiring to me. So I'm so grateful, because we need to be inspired right now, right?
Yes. Yeah, and the fact that she's so optimistic about what we can do. When she talked about behavior, and it is a behavior change, and it is something that we can do. I mean, she's just really about the solutions, and I'm so inspired by that.
I agree. And we can do it, whether we're still raising children or parenting the neighborhood or just mothering our nation, our community, anyone. Just it's really great tools. And I look forward to doing more research on her website too, because it's having to change a lot to keep up with all the things.
Yes.
So thank you for this conversation.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much. And if you've enjoyed this episode or learned from this episode, we encourage you to subscribe to Believe in People. We are so grateful that you have listened and or watched. Thanks, everyone.